Welcome back to Overtime. The college football recruiting period just ended, and as usual, most of the outstanding local athletes chose to play at schools outside the area. KASIMU Harris joins us now with a discussion as to why some of these talented athletes wind up playing so far away from home.
The state of Mississippi has contributed many things to the rest of America and beyond, both civil rights and wrongs, catfish, the blues, literary genius, and arguably three of the greatest NFL players ever, Hall of Fame running back Walter Payton, wide receiver Jerry Rice, and recently retired quarterback Brett Favre. All are native sons of Mississippi, yet they didn't attend Ole Miss. Today we'll discuss those legendary athletes and other Mississippians who took their athletic talents elsewhere, along with ways to keep future prospects in state and a part of the Ole Miss family. So today we have an esteemed panel once again with Eddie Crawford, Senior Associate Athletic Director Emeritus, who played here in the 1950s, lettered in 3 sports, and later coached 3 sports. And also we have Mr. Michael Harmon, who played here from 79 to 82, was later drafted in the 11th round by the New York Jets and played several years. And now he's been a policeman for over 20 years and is the patrol captain at the University Police Department. So gentlemen, let's talk about that a little bit. Basically what happened and where do we go from here with some of these athletes that we missed?
Well, if you're asking me that question, I would first tell you that the numbers are limited now compared to what they were when the few you mentioned that played in the state before. Before, you were unlimited scholarships, and all those people that you mentioned were offered to play at Ole Miss, or they were at the time overlooked. And that happened back during those days a lot because we took the first 40 kids that we could get. And that was the way that the recruiting process turned out, especially within the state of Mississippi before we went outside.
Mr. Harmon, now recruiting is never been an exact science. Can you let me in on that a little bit? Sometimes a highly touted player may fan out, not have a career that we expected them to have. And as we see here, some overlooked players go on to be Hall of Famers. Let me in on that a little bit, please.
I think that's kind of, it's a lot of ways you can look at that. You can look at that for the family upbringing. Sometimes you have athletes that come from good homes that may not be the star athlete that come along and do well. Sometimes you have someone that's a great athlete, may not have the home life, may not have the maturity, and they get to college and they're overwhelmed with school work and practice and lifting weights, and they, even though they got a great talent, they kind of fall by the wayside because you have rules and regulations and timelines and things you have to be. And sometimes those great athletes, you know, it's bad to say, don't make the grade on the field or off sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about some of these legendary Mississippi athletes who may have been overlooked and some that got away. I was doing a little research and I found out that both of you gentlemen are mentioned in the Courting of Marcus Dupree by Willie Morris. So let me in on that a little bit about an Ole Miss player who an Ole Miss recruit that we didn't quite land. Let me in on that a little bit, please.
Well, I can fill you in real good on the Marcus Dupree deal because I was involved in that, and Willie Morris was, excuse me, was talking all the time between our recruiting process and what we were talking with Marcus about. And Oklahoma was in the same situation doing the same ideal thing. And Marcus, they felt like it was better for him to go out of the state rather than in the state. But we had a up-to-date deal going, and a lot of times it does. Now, you're looking at somebody today that grew up in the state of Tennessee but didn't go to Knoxville or didn't go to Nashville or to Memphis to school and chose Ole Miss. And my reasoning for choosing Ole Miss rather than go to the state-supported schools was that it was closer to home. My family couldn't afford to go to Knoxville on the weekends, and they could come here and see me play football. So I think that's got a lot of bearing as your family process of your upbringing, of what you think about family.
Okay. Could you elaborate a little bit on that as well?
At the time, I didn't know I was in the book, but I'm happened to be pretty good friends with Marcus Dupree. When I was 12th grade athlete, he was 9th grade, and he played on Philadelphia's high school team. Matter of fact, he ran a kickoff back against us our senior year. But I remember that game finally. We won 42-14, but he did score the only 2 touchdowns. And the thing like Mr. Eddie just said, you know, at that time in recruiting, because I talked to Marcus a lot during that time. You know, I think he just felt best for him to go out of state at that time. So, but for us, you know, myself, when I was being recruited, I had an older brother that played at Mississippi State, and they just assumed that I was going to Mississippi State. But after I visited with Coach Long, who was the head coach then, and Tom Gould, who coached my brother at State, was coaching here then, I felt comfortable here, and I didn't want to let any of the stigmatisms or the comments that were made by people for us, you know, thing with James Meredith and all this, you know, the past history didn't have effect on me. I wanted to be a rebel, and I played here, and I'm gonna be a rebel, you know, until I die.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, in addition to the gentleman you see here today, we also have Lafayette High School coach Anthony Hart, who was unable to be here. And we're going to go to tape, and he has a few comments about recruiting from a perspective of keeping the in-state athletes here and looking forward.
I don't really know, because it's always on an individual basis, just what a kid has on his mind. I've had kids that stayed in state, and I've had kids that went out of state. So I don't know if it's just a specific thing. I know with some of the ones that you mentioned, like Favre and McNair, they weren't offered by Ole Miss. And I know Favre's only offer was Southern Miss, and McNair's only offer to play quarterback was Alcorn. And Jerry Rice, nobody even knew Jerry Rice, and his only offer was Mississippi Valley. So sometimes they may get overlooked a little bit.
True.
Well, sometimes our kids tend to get overlooked. Like we have Jamie Phillips from here who plays at Ole Miss. He wasn't offered a scholarship by Ole Miss. He went to Northwest Community College, and then he came to Ole Miss. The case with Justin Woodall, who chose to go to Alabama, I think he had a cousin playing at Alabama, and I think that had a lot to do with him going there. I do think that sometimes our kids tend to be overlooked here because they are local, and I hope in the future that's going to change a little bit, and I think it has.
Thanks for your input, Coach Hart. Now let's go back to the panelists here, and give me your thoughts on that, please.
Well, let me say this about recruiting. You try to go after the best players, whether in your state, your surrounding state, or what it may be. And you also have positions that you have to fill. So a lot more goes into recruiting, with the exception of just thinking you're going to get 2 or 3 players from certain areas with it. But I would like to make one statement about all of this. I think going through this year's recruiting with our football staff, our basketball staff, and our baseball staff, we're as good a position coaching-wise as we've been at the University of Mississippi. And I take my hat off to these guys. They work hard, long hours in recruiting these players. And we would like to get all the good players in the state of Mississippi, but it won't always happen.
You, Mr. Harmon?
Kind of reiterate what Mr. Eddie said, as far as recruiting, you got to recruit for need. And sometimes your need may not be the top players in Mississippi at that time. But on the other side, you want to try to get the top players available, but also you want to get the top players available that, you know, grade-wise are doing okay too. Because if you sign a top player here from Mississippi, they don't have the grades, they won't get to play anyway. So it's a combination of the grades and the needs of the team at that time. And like Mr. Eddie said, the coach staff we got now is doing a great job of recruiting in-state players, and I think they'll continue to do that.
We'd like to thank you all very much for coming. Back to you, Justin.
When we come back, Lauren Lee has our interview, and I'll show you one of the best kept secrets on the local sports center.